All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to welcome everybody to our TSC Girls College Recruiting Information Seminar tonight. We have here myself and Ronnie Woodard, who will get the ball rolling. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, hey everybody, welcome. And I know that we spend quite a bit of time talking about college recruiting. And I know many of you have had conversations with Jeff recently on how to navigate sports recruits and things like that. But we wanted to just get in front of you one more time, as a lot of our high school players are starting to come into season as high school soccer is slowly ending, and just kind of reiterate a couple of points, give a little bit of advice, and kind of update on the Division I dead period and things like that. So as we mentioned, Jeff Lightman and myself, Ronnie Woodard, and you have a little bit about us as presenters that is on your screen right now. And I won't go through all of it, but both former college coaches with a real heart for the game, and specifically women's soccer. And I know I am the college soccer girl that spends all weekend with a women's game on my TV and my iPad, and then following Twitter results for the rest so I can keep up with it. So it's certainly an exciting time that they get the opportunity to play. But both myself and Jeff are real excited to be able to take questions today and have conversations with you guys regarding the recruiting process. And just a reminder, if you do have a question, there is a chat box on the right side. You can see it. You can feel free to put those questions in at any time, and we'll get to them as soon as we can.
And we also have, sorry, Ronnie, we also have a Q&A. So you can submit questions at any time in either the Q&A or chat, and we will do our best to get to them throughout the presentation, but also at the end.
And I unfortunately have a dog that is barking at me in the background, and I'd love to say that I can mute her, but I'm going to do my best. I might sneak away when Jeff starts talking and try to give her a treat and get her to be quiet for a few minutes, but I apologize for that. So we'll just go on to the next slide, Jeff. So as you guys are probably well aware, Tennessee Soccer Club has a real storied history when it comes to placing women's soccer players at the college level. As you can see, it's almost impossible to fit all of the logos in the locations that we've sent players. So we did the best that we could over the past several years to add in players in their schools that they've attended. This is a footprint that is updated pretty consistently, because every year it seems like we have a player that's chosen to go to a new school, which is very exciting for us. But we have a great reputation of placing our women's soccer players in college programs. And, you know, we have local talent that stays close to home and will choose a Lipscomb or Belmont or Vanderbilt. Or we might have some talent of players that are choosing to spread their wings and go into an MIT or go down into an Emory and, you know, get out of state and go into different types of divisions. So this is just a basic blueprint of where we've had players participate. Here's some of our recent players that are still current right now. You can see Madison Seacrest, she's at Trevecca Nazarene. We've got Carly Pascal, who is at Duke University, and then Peyton DePriest is one of the players that we have at MTSU right now. And so, you know, we have a lot of players, and there's so many great examples of players that are doing great things. So just last night, Anna Haddock, who graduated last year, she's a senior last year and played for our Tennessee Soccer Club ECNL team. And she went to play at Auburn, and she's been fortunate they've had the opportunity to play. Well, she certainly had an exciting night last night. They went to overtime with Ole Miss, and not only did they go to overtime, but the game came down to the final 10 seconds of the game where she hit the game-winning corner kick and bent it in to the near post. It deflected off an Ole Miss player, and with 2 seconds on the clock in the second overtime, she scored her first collegiate goal. So it's been quite the exciting time. And then we've got Carly Pascal, who just had her senior day, which seems unbelievable to me that she's played 4 years already, but she just recently had her senior day game at Duke. And then, of course, Peyton DePriest is just lighting it up at MTSU. She breaks record after record and has been incredibly successful on the field for MTSU. Jeff, do you want to add anything on any of those?
No, I mean, Rhonda, you've been around TSC for longer and certainly know about all these players. I will say the one nice thing about TSC is we do have a history and reputation of helping our players move on and play in collegiate programs, and that helps all of you who are watching, which is great. Also, I would recommend that if you're interested in this process, don't just use us as coaches. You can also reach out through us to some of these players and talk to them about their experience and their process and what they like about their current school, if you're interested in that school. So one of the nice things about being a part of a big club that has lots of alumni playing in college is if you're interested in so-and-so university, you could look up on the roster and say, oh, wow, they have a player from Tennessee. I wonder if they played at TSC, and look up on their bio. Oh, they did play at TSC. Hey, Coach Ronnie. Hey, Coach Jeff. Do you know these players? What could you connect me with them? And that way they can share some of their experiences about, number one, their program, but number two, just the process in general. So I think that's one resource that we kind of neglect is our alumni that can really help you navigate through the process.
Great point. Yeah, and we're happy to do that. And I know that it would be exciting for our TSC alum to have the opportunity to show off the school and answer any questions. So that's a great point by Jeff. Move on to the next one. There we go. So, we're going to zip through some of these slides and not read all of them to you. But here's the bare bones of women's soccer. There's about 1,400 women's soccer programs across the country. And you're talking Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, and junior college programs. And, we're firm believers, and Jeff and I talk often, and we're old friends. So we have a great history together. But we really believe that there is a place for everyone. If you want to open your search, open your mind, and really get outside of a little bit of your comfort zone of what you know, there is a program for you. And we're big believers that everyone has an opportunity to play at a school if they want to. And so as you can see here, there's over 300 women's soccer programs at the Division I level. And they have 14 athletic scholarships. So what that means is that over the span of 4 years that their players are at their school, they can share 14 full scholarships that are athletically based. That does not mean they get 14 scholarships a year. It means they have a total 14 scholarships that they can spread among all 4 years of players that are on the roster that are active. The same goes for Division II. They have a max of 9.9. Division III is a different situation. They don't offer athletic scholarships. They're grant-based, need-based, merit-based combination packages that are put together for Division III programs. So you'll never have a national letter of intent to sign with a Division III school because there is no soccer scholarship that can be offered. Then we have JUCO options, and we have the NAIA. And so as you can see, it can go from a 2-year school where you plan to go in, play at a 2-year university, and then transfer into a 4-year. You can choose to an academic-based Division III school, or you can choose to go into a Division I program. There is no wrong answer for your college experience if it fits your needs.
Just to give everyone a little bit of context with when we talk about athletic scholarships and how many, as Ronnie said, that 14 is for the entire team. So just to give you a little bit of context, in basketball, there's 5 players who play on the court at a time, and they have, I believe, what is basketball now, 12 or 14 scholarships?
15, I believe. 15,
okay.
15.
And football, 11 play at a time, and they have 95 scholarships. We have 11 players who play at a time and a max of 14 scholarships at Division I. So that should tell you something. And along the lines of most Division I programs and most college soccer programs have anywhere from 25 to 30 players on their roster. So if you do the math and you start thinking, okay, well, there's 14, they're capped at 14 scholarships, but there's 27 players or 28 players on the roster, you start thinking, well, gosh, how does this all work? Well, there's two things, and I know Ronnie will probably touch on it later, is there's something called a head count sport, and then there's something called an equivalency sport. Head count sports is if you get $1, you count as a full scholarship. Those are like basketball and football, where all those kids are on full scholarships or full athletics grant and aid. In soccer, we are what's called equivalency sport, which means those 14 scholarships or those 9.9 scholarships in Division II can be broken up and say somebody gets 50%, somebody gets 75%, somebody gets 10%. So that's how women's soccer works in terms of scholarships and athletics grants and aid. Sorry.
So there's just some terms that you just need to be aware of. A prospective student athlete, or a PSA, is once your daughter has entered into her freshman year of high school, she is considered a PSA, which means all recruiting rules and NCAA rules apply to her. That happens again as soon as she starts her first day of her 9th grade. That makes her a prospective student athlete, which means that none of these rules apply to anyone that's an 8th grader. So you basically are not considered a recruitable student athlete until you start your 9th grade year of school. So anything prior to that is free reign for you, which, just to be very clear, we do not recommend having conversations in 7th and 8th grade regarding recruiting with colleges, nor should you be working on your college list at that point in your soccer career. It is our hope that you're really focusing on being the best player that you can possibly be and being the best student you can be. All of the recruiting things will come later. There's a couple of terms. Again, unofficial visit. Unofficial visit just means that you can go to any university and take a tour and visit the campus as long as you don't accept any money for them, which means that the university on an official visit, which is the opposite of an unofficial, can actually pay for transportation, food, hotel accommodations when you are on an official visit. An unofficial visit means that all costs are put towards the family, meaning that you're responsible for every part of the cost. Now, what you can get is complimentary home admission to a game. If they charge for their home soccer games, you can get complimentary admission and you can be admitted to those. And you can take as many unofficial visits as you'd like. And we'll touch base on all of this later with a different recruiting line. But the bottom line is unofficial visits are unpaid. Official visits are paid. And so here's a little bit on the official visit. Again, the big difference is official visits don't cost the players or the parents anything to go visit the university. What I will tell you is that with the change in the NCAA rules of most recently, most unofficial visits and official visits are happening simultaneously. It's getting that fast, but it's been slowed down a bit because we'll touch base on that a little bit later about the June 15th date and the September 1st date. But these are just terms for you to know right now. Unofficial is unpaid or paid for by the family, and official is paid for by the university. So there's two different letters of intent, and there's a national letter of intent, which is issued through the NCAA that is signing, putting your name on the line, making a commitment to that school for a set amount of athletic aid. A letter of commitment is saying that you're going to go participate at that school. So let's say a Division III school, and I've chose to go play at MIT. I will probably get a letter of commitment and admission from MIT so that I can have a signing day, and so that I can enjoy the recognition that a national letter of intent has. But it's not the same situation. One is a national letter of intent issued from the NCAA. The other is a letter of commitment that most time is issued from that university. One of the key components that you need to make sure that you register with, and this is one of the things you want to write down in the terms to know, is the NCAA Eligibility Center. You can register for that online, and then you can share that information with your high school counselor. What the NCAA Eligibility Center does is certifies your ability to participate in a sport. That is all that it does. There are minimum standards for NCAA guidelines per academics. So it will be an example of core courses, test scores, And those are going to have to combine to be able to tell if you are going to be NCAA official and if you're eligible to be able to play. A good example of this is it's required you take 4 years of English. It's required that you take 3 years of a science, 2 years of a foreign language. Those are all going to be things that are going to be captured on your transcript, because when you register for the Eligibility Center, you will let your guidance counselor know about this, because they're going to have to make sure to send them official transcripts to certify you through the Eligibility Center to be able to be recruited. Now, the question is, when can you do it? You can do it at any point. Once you do it, you'll have it forever. And then you can go in and update it, and you can let them know your high school. And then it'll be the responsibility of your high school counselor to make sure that they provide the documents that are important for you to be able to be certified. Because before you can step on a college campus and participate in your first game, there's this stamp of approval that comes from the NCAA. And what it says is this player is academically eligible and has met the NCAA standards to be able to participate, which means they satisfied all the core courses, they have the correct ACT or SAT score, and they have proof of graduation on their final transcript that's been received from the Eligibility Center. Then you move out of the Eligibility Center into the university seamlessly. But it is important that you register for this particular organization, because it is the final say of the Eligibility Center saying that you are eligible to be able to participate. There's no stress involved in this. There's no evaluations. It's simply providing the information that they need in order to certify your daughter to be able to participate. Jeff, you have anything on that?
Yeah, and just one thing to add on the Eligibility Center is, you know, if you're at a high school that a lot of players in different sports have gone on and played Division I or Division II, then chances are your guidance counselor has gone through this and understands what those criteria are and what those core courses are. However, if you're at a smaller high school or a high school that doesn't have as much athletic success, you may want to be a little bit more proactive with your high school guidance counselor, because a lot of times people assume, oh, well, I graduated from high school, I've completed all I need to complete. That's not the case with the Eligibility Center. There's a very different set of criteria in how many Englishes that you have to take, how many maths you have to take, how many other core courses, sciences and whatnot. So a lot of people think, well, I was in advanced English or advanced math and I took 3 years of math and 3 years of English because it was so advanced. The NCAA doesn't care about that. They want their 4 core courses, 4 years of certain subjects. So that's something that you really need to be aware of, because there's a limit to how much you can complete after you graduate from high school. So you don't want to get yourself ineligible, even though you're smart, even though you have a high GPA and high SATs, you can easily get ineligible because you're missing a core course. So that's something to be very proactive about. Now, how do you find out about that? Again, by logging on to the Eligibility Center, creating an account. But also there's a guide called The Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete that you can download, I believe, on the Eligibility Center website. I will actually research it and put up a link on our college programs page, college recruiting page on our website to it. But that's a guide that will help you through the process of everything that we're going to talk about tonight, but also specifically the Eligibility Center. So it's a really valuable resource and has a worksheet on that. All right, so next steps. How do I start my recruiting process? So obviously I'm not going to start mine because it happened a long time ago. But how do you start yours? So a bunch of things that you want to focus on is, you know, academics. What type of academic school do you want? What type of program do you want to study? Obviously soccer opportunities, where, you know, most of us are here because we want to play in college. Size of the school, community, location, you know, how far from home, obviously cost of attendance. You may want to go to a certain place. I know I wanted to be a doctor, so I wanted to go to Johns Hopkins growing up, and that just wasn't available for me money-wise. So a lot of these factors you want to start to consider as you are going through this process. Now, the other sort of seminar workshop that I've been doing. I did it with the O3s, the 02, 03s, and then the 04s, and I'll be scheduling it with the 05 age group and the 06 age group, where we'll do more of a workshop and talking a lot more about how we use sports recruits, how do we pick schools, and all that. But the biggest starting point for me is really sitting down and understanding what you want, and not what your parents want, not what your friends want, but what do you want? And that's really where this whole process starts, is sort of, having a little moment and saying, all right, here's what I want in my college experience, and writing that down. So what I encourage everybody to do, and again, I do this in our workshops, is write down 10 things that you want in a school, that you want in a college experience, and then rank those in order of importance. And that way, that sort of starts to shape where you're going to go with things and the schools that you're going to look at, and how you're going to go about the start of your recruiting process. So here's sort of an example timeline. Obviously, we are living in a day and age of COVID. So recruiting timelines have been dramatically shifted with all of this. But obviously, academics, you're going to see is key, is making sure that your core courses and your NCL eligibility starts your freshman year in high school. So any grades that you have from previous to that don't count at all, but it all starts your freshman year. So just making sure that your core GPA is strong, that you're really paying attention to that from the very beginning. Because one thing that we see, or when I was coaching in college and Ronnie was coaching in college, is we'd see people that their GPA was very good, but their core GPA was low because of maybe 1 or 2 bad grades from their freshman year. And even though they have a 95 GPA, only your core GPA counts. Only GPA from core courses count. So your gym credits don't count. Some of your electives don't count. So really, it's important to focus and make sure that your core GPA remains high. So again, your sophomore year is when things are going to really start to go along a bit. Obviously, depending on the types of schools that you're looking at, your timeline's going to shift. If you're looking at the top 25 schools in the nation at Division I, you're going to really need to get started your freshman year and early in your sophomore year. If you're looking at more Division III schools, then things start a little bit later. But again, making a list of what we just talked about, your 10 things that you want in a school, and then start to make a list of schools that match that. And then starting to contact coaches. And when we're traveling as teams, TSC teams, writing to those and emailing those coaches and saying, hey, I'm going to be at so-and-so. I want to introduce myself and tell you where I'm going to be. So understand that these coaches can't call you back, which we'll talk about in a little bit, or write you back. But we'll talk about that. So your junior year is to start to, late in sophomore year and early in junior years, to start to kind of pare down your list of schools, start to take those visits. You can start some unofficial visits in your sophomore year, but really your junior year is really when things are going to take shape a lot, especially early in your junior year, because you can go and watch those teams play. You can do all sorts of those things. Obviously, meeting with coaching staffs, attending matches in the fall, which we just talked about, scheduling your ACT and SAT tests, and all of that. So your senior year, obviously, traditionally, for those who are interested in Division I, a lot of recruiting was done in the sophomore and junior year, and recruiting in your senior year has been rather limited with COVID. The one nice thing I will say about COVID, I can't believe I'm saying it this way, is I do believe it slowed down the recruiting process, which I actually think is a healthy thing. And Ronnie and I have had discussions about this, is recruiting kind of got out of control for a while in the early recruiting in freshman and sophomore year. And if there's anything that can slow the recruiting process down a bit, that will be a good thing, in my opinion. I know in years past when Ronnie and I first started coaching, we did a lot of recruiting in the senior year, and most of it primarily was done during the senior year. And you really got to know the coaches better. You really understood yourself a little bit better. I mean, think about it. If you're a freshman in high school, do you know what you want to do in 4 years? You're going to be a completely different person. So that's something to consider as you're going through this process and making your lists of things to do, is constantly revamp that list. And because you're changing as a person, these are very formative years for you. So understand that your needs and desires can change. And as you go through this timeline, all of that can change. Ronnie, you want to add anything on that?
No, I would just highly encourage everyone to take their time and make the right decision. I do agree with Jeff that anything to stop and slow down the recruiting process was really a positive move from NCAA. That happened prior to COVID hitting. The changing of the NCAA rules that were brought in were hit last year, which started to slow down the process. And then with COVID, it definitely slowed it all the way down. Now, what we're seeing is a slight uptick now. And we're seeing a bit more pressure that's coming into some of these players that are ready to make a decision. And it's mainly with the seniors that are uncommitted. And so at this point, you're getting to a situation where there's no, the next recruitable time is January 1st. And so there is a little bit of stress that's being shared by some of our seniors right now that don't have homes. And we're here to tell you that you'll find a home. It's all going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. You will find a home no matter what.
Agreed. So moving on, this is what the question we always get is, well, I want to talk to college coaches, but what do I say? So one of the things we have, this is actually on our website. I just posted this presentation on our website a couple minutes before we started. So you guys all have access to these slides, and we're going to make the video available as well. But one of the things we wanted to provide was just sort of a sample intro email to college coaches, so that you can, I'm not going to read this to you, but you can go ahead and read it and just sort of, you're introducing yourself. One of the things that people don't understand is college coaches are human beings too. And they want to get to know you, just like you want to get to know them. You may be nervous. They're nervous as well. Obviously, they've done this a lot longer and more than you have, because you're new to this process. But understand that every interaction they have with a prospective student athlete is a new one. And, you know, everybody's different. And so I approached, as a college coach, I approached every player as a relationship. And at the beginning of the relationship, you're nervous because you don't know each other. You don't know how each other is going to act and how to get to know each other. But I think that's what part of the recruiting process really needs to be, is building that relationship, because this is somebody you're going to play for 4 years. So it's not just about the school. It's not just about yourself. It's not about the pride. It's not about the scholarship. It's really about the experience. And a big part of that experience is getting to know that college coach. So making sure that you're the one doing this work. Your parents have gone to college. They've had their experience. They've had their fun. Now it's your turn. And the more invested you are in this process, the better it will be for you. And I always kind of say this to players, you know, you don't want your dad running to the mall and picking out jeans for you. That would be embarrassing. You know, so, you know, really be invested in this process, because the jeans that dad's going to bring home are probably not the jeans that you would pick out. So if your parents are the ones emailing coaches and picking up the phone and talking to coaches, chances are they're going to pick a very different school than you might want to pick. So I really think it's important that you're involved in leading the process. Yes, your parents are going to nudge you along, but if you're involved in really leading it and taking charge and getting to know those coaches, I do think that you have more chance of success at picking the right school that you're going to be happy with from the moment you choose it to the moment you enter your freshman year to the moment you graduate your senior year. I think that's a really important thing.
I think that's a great point from Jeff. And some of the other things that I would mention in this, and I love that Jeff mentioned that college coaches are people too, it's important that this is short and concise, right? Because there's a few things. One, sometimes college coaches have a million emails that don't pay attention to detail very well. So if you write them a very long email, you know they're going to skim and find the important parts that they need, much like I'm very guilty of. Whenever I get correspondence in my email, I will skim to find the important parts. The second thing that I would say is, not only is this short and to the point, the one thing that should be included is to expand the why. It's very important that they realize that you are talking directly to them and directly to their program. Even if you're sending a similar type letter to 30 different schools, this team and this school has made that list of 30, and you need to tell them why. My father is an alum, hotty toddy. Or I would like to study biomedical engineering, and the University of Chicago has a great program for that. Or I just saw that huge last minute win, War Eagle, right? Those type of things show these coaches that you're genuinely interested in their program and that you're paying attention to what's happening. The second thing is, I would highly recommend that if you're going to utilize a copy and paste for when you're sending your emails, that you be very cautious and make sure you know exactly who it is that you're sending the email to. So I'm a prime example. My name is Ronnie. A lot of people think that I'm a guy, right? Until you read some of my emails, and it has a lot of exclamation points and little smiley faces. And then you quickly realize that I'm a girl. But I had this experience at Vanderbilt.
That's not fair, Ronnie. I use smiley faces and exclamation points too.
So when I was at Vanderbilt, I gave birth to my son, and we were in the season when it happened. And the whole webpage was dedicated to my son being born and being on the sidelines, and pictures of me with him and things like that. But yet several emails would come into my inbox. Dear Mr. Woodard. And that was just a dead giveaway to me that they really had no idea who I was, and that who the program was led by. And or I would get an example of, Dear Coach Woodard, I'm very interested in Belmont University. Well, I was at Vanderbilt. And so that's a dead giveaway too. So be very diligent in your proofreading before you press send. It's important. Also, make sure that your schedule is correct. That's very important too. And that your jersey number is correct. All of those things are really going to be things that they're going to utilize often.
Yeah, and I would even expand upon that, is in the subject line of your email, put really important information. If we're going to a tournament, if it's, a castle event, put, your name, your club team, your grad year and your uniform number in the subject line. It's okay to be, have it that busy, because again, as Ronnie said, especially leading into a tournament, I would get 300 emails, or more the week of the tournament. So trying to read through every email and pick out the information that I need. There was nothing more frustrating than reading an entire email and not even knowing the grad year of a player, and then having to click their player profile sheet to get that information or what team they're on. So make it, college coaches are human, but we're also dumb, and treat us like infants, and just make it super easy for them to get all the information that they need. I think that's a great point by Ronnie.
And yes, it's perfectly acceptable to be in correspondence with the so-called recruiting coordinator. It doesn't have to go to the head coach. You can have direct correspondence and still be very interested and show your interest by talking to the recruiting coordinator.
Yeah. Okay. So also here's an example of a follow-up email, whether it's after the tournament or just following up. I think one thing that people don't recognize is they're like, well, I'm timid. I don't want to overwhelm them. I don't want to be a stalker or upset them or annoy them. No, that's not part of this process. This process is all about introducing yourself. And, you know, they always say the squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's true. I mean, I can tell you how many stories of girls that I recruited that I wasn't necessarily as interested in at the beginning, but they kept bothering me and bothering me and bothering me. And all it showed was how much they wanted to come to my school, that I was like, you know what? This girl, she may not be the best, but she's passionate and she's fighting and she's going to work hard to just get an opportunity. Think about what she's going to do when she's here. She's not going to take no for an answer. And I brought in players like that, and they were great players because they were so invested and fought so hard just to get the opportunity. And it wasn't based on just athleticism or skill. It was based on those intangibles, and those are always players that college coaches are looking for. So don't be afraid to keep following up and making phone calls and emails. Don't take no for an answer, and don't be afraid to bother coaches. All right, here's an example. Obviously, this is a male profile, Clint Dempsey, who played in Texas. So don't be confused. Just an example of a player profile sheet of information that you might want to include: high school, GPAs, SAT scores, club experience, all those sorts of things, and references. Don't be afraid to use your coaches and directors at TSC as references for you. Anything you want to add on this, Ronnie?
No, just keep it simple and make sure that there's nothing prior to 9th grade that's put on this profile. Your middle school goal scoring ability is probably not relevant to how you're going to be successful at the next level. So make sure you keep it for 9th grade on for any honors and awards.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, social media. So this is probably one of the most important slides that we'll cover, and both Ryan and I will chime in on it. I can't tell you how many players I stopped recruiting because of social media. Great players. So your social media matters, and if we could put more exclamation points and we could fit them all in here, we would, because it really does. Social media, as you guys are immersed in it, it does speak to people's character, and you find more and more of schools and companies now of not hiring or firing people because of social media and their posts. So it's really important that number one, if you have social media posts that are inappropriate, take them down. But understand also that once they're up, they're kind of findable forever. So you do not want to define yourself in one angry moment of time or one you think is funny moment, but it's not funny. So I think that's a really important thing that people and college coaches, they're looking for character, not just scoring ability, not just speed, not just skill, but character, because your character does matter. It's one thing that you own as a person. You could have many shortcomings, but your character you're in control of. So I think it's really important to have integrity and character and be a good person. So social media is such an important thing. Thank goodness they didn't have it when I was growing up. That's all I have to say about that. Don't let social media ruin a great opportunity because of one moment in time. I think that's a really important thing. If it's something that you'd be embarrassed if your grandmother read, then don't put it up. It's not worth it. You don't need friends to like you on Facebook or on Instagram. What you need is to create opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, and if I could talk about social media for a second, I'll tell you about just not only social media, but your behavior in general. I always like to make sure that I touch base on this. There's eyes on you everywhere that you go. From the minute you get out of your car to the minute you get back in your car and you leave the facility, there's always someone watching. How you speak to your parents can be seen by others. How you have conversations with your teammates can be perceived and heard from others. and make sure that whatever you're doing is respectful and it is the way that you want to be represented. So be very cautious with your overall behavior. Now, first of all, you should talk nice to your parents all the time. I'll just go ahead and say that. It should never be a habit that you have to break, being smarty pants to mom and dad. But you certainly want to make sure that when you're in public, that you're very cautious with how you conduct yourselves. Here's a great example. I was on a panel at one of the tournaments one time years ago as a college coach with several other coaches. And they said there was a player that was diligent and really wanted to be recruited from this particular university. Well, the university only had one time slot to be able to catch this player play, which meant they had to leave the big facility and go to an off-site field to watch this player play. So they made the effort, went to that field, put their chair down in the corner of the field, sat down, proceeded to watch the player on the field sass her teammates, be very frustrated with the flow of the game, and then the coach substituted her, brought her off the field. She walked right past the coach, ignored him, went straight to her bag, acted like she was getting water, and picked up her cell phone. And the coach saw all this happen, picked up his chair, walked immediately to his car, and never recruited that player, because his comment was, why do I want to bring that type of disrespect into my program? My program is indicative of me as a coach, and I have to have a team filled of players that have character. And this is not the type of negative energy that we want to bring to the program. I can tell you many times I'd be standing in the line for the restroom when I was recruiting with Vanderbilt, and the amount of times girls would be talking in front of me and then turn around and see the crest of my school on my jacket and just turn beet red and put their heads down. So the lesson here is be very proud of what comes out of your mouth with your actions and your voice. It is vitally important that that is part of your fiber. And it's vitally important that you understand that there's eyes on you all the time. That is not just in social media, it's how you conduct yourself as a young woman. Okay, that's it. I said it. You're welcome, Mom and Dad. Pretty easy. As you go into your high school freshman and sophomore year, there's new rules. So we alluded to it earlier. You used to be able to have fair game when you were younger. Now there is a June 15th date. So in your freshman and sophomore year, you cannot have any contact with college coaches. They can't email you. They can't call you. They can't text you. They can have zero contact with you. You can attend their games. You can attend their ID camps, and you can receive one form letter type email in return to any type of correspondence that you've had prior to June 15th of your junior year. So that would mean you have completed your entire freshman year and your entire sophomore year. As of June 15th of that summer, before you turn into a junior, that is when it is fair game. Now, fair game means everything. Email, text, phone calls are all permitted from June 15th on. Total correspondence can come your way. Again, prior to that, they cannot return an email. They cannot return a text. They cannot return a phone call, and they can't take your phone call without telling you that they cannot have a conversation with you, although they would enjoy recruiting you. Okay. So that is very important that you understand that. Now, that doesn't mean we tell you to not email people. What we're saying is it could be a very frustrating process in the first 2 years of your recruiting experience, because you can get very little feedback. You won't even know if they read the emails or not. But what you'll see is if they show up at your games, and if you have some camp opportunities to be able to go, or if they've been in contact with your coach. Now, once June hits, again, like I said, fair game. Everything opens up, and you get the opportunity to begin visiting campus as of September 1st of that junior year. Official and unofficial can begin at that point. If there's questions about that, feel free to put that in the chat or the Q&A, because a lot of people seem to have questions about that. So if there are any, feel free to just chime in.
You want to go to the senior year?
Sure, yep. Senior year, just keep rolling, right? You just keep going on to your recruiting process. If you're done, fantastic. You'll probably have taken, let's say a prime example of a recruiting process right now would be developing and being in contact, possibly attending some ID camps in your freshman and your sophomore year. Once your junior year starts, you're getting to a point where you've named a good group of schools in your head and you've made a decision on who you're going to visit, whether it's on an unofficial visit. Again, I am so sorry about my dog. So you will make the decision to go unofficially visit schools. Most of the time you'll have correspondents, have conversations that are in heavy detail about what role and where they see you playing in this environment. And so then you'll have all the information you need in order to make a decision. And once you make that decision, most of the time that's when you'll take your official visit and you'll go on campus, expense paid, with a lot of recruits that have already committed to have an official visit in your senior year.
And you might be thinking, well, why do I want to take an official visit, even though, especially if I've already committed? That's the best time to take an official visit because, again, spending time with the players is something I would recommend. Even if you go and do an unofficial visit your junior year or an official visit your junior year, spend the night with the players. You know, coaches can they're going to highlight the best parts of their program. They're going to highlight what makes them, what they're proud of. As you and us all know, you know, as teenagers, you guys don't have filters. So you're going to go on a visit and you're going to hang out with the players and you're going to find out what the real program is like, for good and for bad. You're going to find out what the coaches really like, how they treat players, and you're going to get sort of an experience that's a little bit different than sitting on the couch of the coach or sitting on the phone with the coach. So I really, really encourage that, to go and spend time with players, because it's going to give you a better picture of what your experience is going to be like. So some other things about other notes. Division II and Division I have slightly different rules. Division I has a rule that says you can only have 4 evaluation, or excuse me, you can have 7 evaluation opportunities per year, and only 3 of them could be contacts. So if they talk to you before or after a game, that counts as a contact and an evaluation towards that 7. Division II doesn't have any number of limit to the number of evaluations per student athlete. So just going back to that, let's say you know, you're a player on a TSC team and a coach has come and watched, a coach from X university has come and watched your team play 4 or 5 times, and then all of a sudden they want to start recruiting you. They've already used a whole bunch of their evaluations for you, even if they haven't really noticed you as much. So just be aware of that, that there's a limit to how many times a coach can come and watch you play per year. So during the summer, that doesn't matter. That's it's unlimited during the summer, but it's during the school year.
And one more thing, a tournament counts as 1 evaluation.
Correct. Correct.
Right. So Jeff, you have a question here. What's the difference between an official visit and an unofficial visit?
Yeah, so as Ronnie pointed out earlier, the biggest difference is an official visit is a paid visit. It has to happen after June 15th of your junior year. And that's where the school will pay for your housing. They'll usually host you on campus with a student athlete, usually a freshman. They will pay for your mileage or flight in. They will pay for you to attend, you know, maybe a football game or a basketball game or a soccer game. They can also pay for family members to accompany you. If you're in the same car, they obviously can't pay for a flight for your parents or anything. But and then again, they can allow what is it, up to 3 tickets to a home event. non-playoffs. So playoffs, they're not allowed to. An unofficial visit can happen anytime again after that June 15th date. It used to be any time, but they've limited it now. And that's where you go on your own dime and you go and visit the school. If you go and visit a school without any interaction, correct me if I'm wrong, Ronnie, without any interaction with the college coach, it doesn't even count as an unofficial visit. You're just going to visit the school. If you're going to tour a school, I guess that can count as an unofficial visit, but in terms of NCAA recruiting, if there's no interaction with the college coaches, it doesn't really matter, correct?
No, of course not. Mm-hmm.
So basically there's no restrictions or no limitations on the number of unofficial visits. So you can go to visit a school 3 or 4 times unofficially where they're not paying for anything, but you can only go to 1 official visit per school and only 5 official visits total. Hopefully that answered your question. So, possible questions to ask on a visit. I mean, there's a ton. Really ask what's important to you, and don't be afraid of asking questions. I think it's really important. There's nothing worse than, again, sitting in a college coach's office and you not having any questions, because A, it's either you're too shy to ask questions, or B, you haven't done enough research and aren't really being thoughtful about the process to ask any questions. So even if you think the coach has covered everything, ask a question that's personal to you. It's okay to ask questions about scholarships. It's okay to ask questions of how do I fit into your program? The key is it's not the question, it's how you ask the question, how you present the question. If you ask, well, how much money am I going to get? Well, that's sort of off-putting. That's not necessarily a good question. But if you ask a question of, where do I fit in your recruiting process? Money is important in terms of our finances as a family. I'm just curious, where do you see me in the scholarship picture? Because it does have an impact on whether the school is affordable for me. So I think if you phrase your questions properly, they're not insulting. Questions aren't necessarily insulting. Attitudes are insulting. So I think it's really important on how you phrase questions. But if you have questions, ask. I think that's part of this whole process. Recruiting is like a dance. It's about getting to know your partner, being comfortable, and then moving forward together. So I think asking questions on your visit are very important. Ronnie?
No, I agree with everything Jeff said. There's all questions are welcome. There's no reason not to openly ask. The things that we would want for you and our recommendation for each of our players is, do you feel valued from this program? In the relationship, in the conversation with this coach, do you feel as if there is a value placed on you as an active participant on this team? Meaning, are you going to be able to be a contributing member to this team? And do you feel like you have that respect going into this relationship? That is really important. And that's one of the things that I hope your parents have conversations with you about. What role do you think that you're going to play on this team? One. And the second thing is, what role do you want soccer to play in your life during your college experience? Those are 2 very different questions, but they have to be addressed as a family. What role will you play in the program, and how do they value you? And then what role do you want soccer to play in your life as you're going through your college experience? Those are 2 really important parts. And that's the most important thing I would say, the questions to ask. And that's internal questions and questions that as a family, not just to ask questions on your visit.
I would also add into that and ask about academic support. As a student athlete, what type of academic support would I have access to? If we're traveling a lot, are there tutors? Is there an academic advisor that I see? How is that all handled? How about picking classes? Do student athletes have priority in choosing classes? for scheduling, so I could schedule around practices and travel and whatnot. So I think those are all questions to ask, because some athletic departments are going to have huge academic advising programs, and some are going to have very little help. So those are some things that you really want to factor in, whether you're a good student or not.
So here's and everyone's well aware of this. We tweet about it all the time. It's all over everywhere if you know anything about Division I sports. As you know, the dead period started in March when COVID hit. And that meant the recruiting dead period was over, which means that they could have verbal conversations on a phone and can correspond through email, but there could be no in-person, off-campus, or on-campus recruiting that was permissible for Division I programs only. So what we've seen is it kept getting extended another month and another month and another month. And then finally at their September date, they decided that instead of putting it through the end of October, they've extended it all the way through January 1st. We were hopeful at different points that could possibly be lifted, but as we see the current climate and what's happening right now with some of the sports organizations and the spread of COVID, I'm not sure that we're going to see that raised anytime soon. As of right now, we're going to look forward to having college coaches from Division I on our sidelines again after January 1st of 2021. So just because D1 has suspended all activity until January 1st, Division II has resumed. So they are back on the road. Division II and Division III and NAIA, those are all actively able to go on the road and recruit. So you might have some college coaches that are showing up at some of your practices or at your games in the near future. It would really depend on the institutional control. I have friends that are at some Division III schools that their university has told them there will be no in-person off-campus recruiting done. And they haven't made a decision of when they're going to lift that. They believe that's a safety concern for their university and for their staff that they've implemented. However, per NCAA rules, everyone but Division I can actively still recruit. It's only Division I that is off the road and staying home. Now, what's important during this time frame? Video. And Jeff and I will continue to chat about this, and we can talk about it right now, Jeff. You know, what's your answer to not being able to have a coach live on your sideline? The answer is you're going to have to find video to provide these coaches. I've had conversations with coaches saying that they plan during the showcases over the winter of sitting in their house and having one on the TV, one on their iPad, and possibly one on their phone to see which game they're going to try and watch next at any event that will be live streamed. So it's their hope that these events that we'll be participating in during the dead period will be live streamed and provided to college coaches so that they can then watch those games. Now, if they're not, I highly recommend that you in some way, shape, or form find a way, even if it's with your cell phone on the sideline, to get bits and pieces of you participating in events over these winter months. Anything you want to hit on with that, Jeff?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, obviously, we kind of threw it together quickly back in July, or excuse me, August, the College ID games that we videoed. We will plan on doing something similar here in late November, December, on a weekend or a weeknight. We're just going to try and play some games, teams against teams. It'll be a little bit better when we have full teams around. I know in Castle they're offering free videos for games, and we have a couple cameras in the club that when they aren't being used for some games, we will grab them and play and provide those links. So one of the things that we've done is we've sent a Google Sheet out to every college coaches in the country, and we will constantly populate that Google Sheet with more and more videos. So they all have that and access to that. So that's one thing we want to keep on doing. But anytime your team has a chance to video a game, send us the link, because we will add it to our master Google Sheet. But yeah, video is becoming a much more important factor than it was before. One thing I will say about video is do not go and spend $600–800 on a recruiting service to make a video for you. I think we all know that in this day and age, most people are pretty comfortable, using iMovie on their phone or on a Mac, or have access to some sort of program, and you can make a quick video, put it up on YouTube or put it in your Sports Recruits account, and instantly share it with college coaches. So there's nothing that you can't do that one of those services is going to provide that you can't do with an hour's worth of work. So, that's part of being invested also, is doing the work yourself, everything. So with that, with video, obviously full games are good. But one of the things to understand with college coaches is they're not going to want to watch an hour-and-a-half game where you're a dot. So one of the things that when you create a video, when you create a highlight video, you also don't need a minute intro of you talking. All they're going to do is fast forward through that. So the ideal video for me when I was coaching was a couple minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes of just some skill work individually. You could be in your backyard, your mom or dad could be videoing you with their iPhone, and you're doing some work at speed, at a high rate of speed. If you make a mistake, that's okay, but a high rate of speed, so you're challenged. And then follow it up with a half of soccer, a half of in-game. You've identified yourself by putting a little circle around yourself every now and then, or an arrow. Maybe some highlights of a game, and then a full half, so they can see positionally, where are you? Are you staying with the play? Are you making intelligent runs? Are you reading things well? So to me, that's what made a good video, was having all those pieces in one place. Anything more on that, Ronnie?
No, I mean, I feel like we've really addressed all of this right here and what this means for recruits. It just means that you have to seize the day, and you must remain patient at the same time. Mm-hmm. So you can see this of what we're saying and what this means for recruits. But honestly, just in a brief summary, is do the research, do the work, take the time, invest in it. There's this beautiful thing called the internet that you can get all your answers that you need, right? So kids, instead of spending all your time on Snapchat at night, you can start and look at women's soccer programs that are across the country and do some research on them. Or the U.S. News and World Report academic standards for the rankings of the universities are all really helpful. Places that you could spend better time when you're on your phone. So, how does it affect? It really, between the COVID restrictions and the NCAA rules and the dead period, it's affecting every university differently. You're seeing some universities that are saying that they're done recruiting. You're saying other universities that are hitting it hard and looking at video. And then you have others that are having an impact in the amount of money that they could spend in the next 2 recruiting classes, because NCAA has granted an additional year of eligibility to their seniors because of the year that they lost this year. So it's really affecting each university differently. And I think it's really fair that you ask questions regarding how it's affecting the university and their recruiting process.
Okay, question time. So feel free to ask away. Go ahead on the Q&A or the chat, and write down some questions, and Ronnie and I are here to answer away. So we'll just allow people to do that. You can read some of the questions on here already. Official visits, how many, we've gone over all that. Again, registering with the Eligibility Center, that's really important. That link is actually on our website. If everyone doesn't know, you go onto our website, and under the top it says programs. And then if you go under programs, it will say college recruiting program, and we have a page dedicated for that, and there's a bunch of links. So, oops, found a mistake. ID camps. We haven't talked about ID camps, Ronnie. So ID camps, people always ask, are ID camps important? I would do research on ID camps. I do think, especially now with COVID, it's probably more important to attend an ID camp than maybe before. But understand, you don't have to attend every ID camp of a school just because they want you to. And I would really ask pertinent questions about the ID camp. How many girls are going to be there? If there's 100 girls there, that's probably not an ID camp as much as it's a fundraiser for that program. If it's an ID camp of 30 girls, great. Are the coaches going to be there? When I was out west at a school, we had a rival school that, they'd run an ID camp and their coaches would be off playing golf and the kids would be running the camp. That's not an ideal recruiting situation. So there's lots of different things. I would also encourage you to go to maybe an ID camp, if it's at a specific school, ask them, hey, is there any other schools that are going to be representative at that school? When we hosted an ID camp at San Jose State, we asked a Santa Clara coach and a Stanford coach and some other schools to come and work our camp because it made it more attractive for some of those kids to come and be looked at by multiple schools. So I think that's really important, and being honest and saying to a coach, asking these questions, because you can say, I only have a limited amount of money for ID camps. I'm really interested in your school. Can I find out these questions so that I can make those choices wisely and choose the proper camps? I think that's a legitimate question to ask with ID camps. Ronnie, anything on that?
No. The first one is, some coaches have requested video from team trainings and parents are not obviously coming to the sidelines of training. Did the club ever film those?
We typically do not film training, but we can. Mm-hmm. Or, that's a situation where I think, yes, we don't necessarily want parents hovering on the sidelines, but if it's a situation where, you've talked to the coach and said, I'm filming, training for such and such a school, I can't imagine a coach is going to be upset about that or not understanding. So as a club, we don't, but I guess that's not totally correct, because Ronnie, you've filmed yours from time to time. I think it's a question of whether there's a specific purpose.
Right, and I think all you have to do is have a conversation with your coach. And if it's a director, they can have a conversation, or that coach can go directly into the director and request to have the video of the training session. I think that Tennessee Soccer Club is willing to do anything and everything that they can to help their players. So the next one is dealing specifically with the extra year of eligibility that's been given to these college players. And the question is saying, how is this affecting roster sizes for the years after that? And the honest answer that we have, that I've seen so far and I've had conversations with, is it's affecting all the way from the beginning to the end. So it's affecting the class of 21 that are coming in. It's affecting the class of 22, not only in roster size, but scholarship dollars. And I think it's really an individual basis. I think there's no two schools that are running in the exact same way. I've had conversations with coaches that are reducing scholarships for all of their class of 21 coming in. And then I've had other conversations with coaches saying, yes, my university is allowing me to pick and choose who's going to receive that extra year of eligibility and that scholarship dollar to keep going with. So, and then other people are saying, listen, I have too many people on my roster. I can't take any more players. So as you can see, that's my dog. Listen, here's the backstory on my dog, since we have you guys here. She was diagnosed with a terminal disease about a month ago. And so she basically runs this house now. She barks, she eats, she does everything that she wants. And so now she's decided she wants to play with her toy at my feet. So I definitely apologize in advance for how spoiled she is, but there is a method and a reason to why she is so needy. Okay, she's quiet, so I'm going to finish up. So basically, to answer you, Joe, we don't know. We don't really know the long-term repercussions. We don't know the short-term repercussions. We just know there's repercussions across the board, and every university is handling it differently. I think all we can do is put our best foot forward and get in front of as many coaches as we possibly can, and be hopeful for our players.
Yeah, I think to expound on that, I do think there's going to be a long-term effect as well, in terms of there'll probably be more players redshirt over the next couple of years than maybe normal, where they just practice and don't play in games, just because there will be a bit of a trickle down from next year, or this year rather, and next year.
Next question. When should girls register for the NCAA Eligibility Center? Anytime you want to, once you hit high school. You can go ahead and register. If you think about it tonight, when you get off, you can go ahead and register your daughter for the NCAA Clearinghouse. There's no set time, but you really do need to get it done prior to their senior year of high school.
Yeah, it's very important. You don't want to wait until the last minute.
No, I would recommend doing it. If you wanted to hang up right now and get off our call and do it because it's fresh in your mind, that's fine.
And then, Ronnie, how many girls get scholarships from TSC to colleges per year?
Oh, goodness. You know, I don't know an exact number, but I have the U18 team in the ECNL for the last several years. And I can say that all but one of my players that graduated last year, and I think I graduated 10, went on to play college soccer in some way, shape, or form. The one that did not made that choice on her own to not play college soccer. So she was not given the opportunity to have scholarship, but she wasn't interested in playing. The rest of them are all in their colleges and receive some sort of aid or scholarship, whether it's Division I, II, III, and the 3 could have been a grant and aid. I actually have a player that's at MIT right now. I have one that just committed to Carnegie Mellon. And so it really depends, but I would say that there's a large number of our players that receive some sort of grant and aid or scholarship every single year.
And then, do college coaches only look at girls on ECNL teams, or do even girls on the second team get looked at by college coaches?
So I would say absolutely 100% yes. They get recruited at every different type of program and every different type of level. Like we said at the very beginning, we are big believers that there is a home for everyone. Now, there may be different paths to get to that home, as Jeff and I have discussed. It might be one of those situations that your daughter gets identified in an ID camp, and she has a wonderful performance there, and her coach starts tracking her team at that point. She might get identified if she were guest playing for a team, and then they reach out and they start tracking your daughter. They might have shown up at a high school game, and she may have stood out, and they begin tracking her. So I think there are lots of different avenues to be identified, and I firmly believe that coaches are watching all of them. What we have to do, and it's our responsibility, is to make sure that you get your information to them so they know you exist. That's the most important part. And you share with them your upcoming events and your schedule and who you play for and when you play, because then you have a chance of them coming to see you.
And it really doesn't matter who initiates the first contact. Maybe it's they saw you and liked you. Maybe it's you're interested in them and have written them. That shouldn't matter, because the process is going to move forward the same regardless. So to kind of wrap up, just wanted to say thank you all for coming tonight and committing a Wednesday evening to us. I want to thank Ronnie for being on. Just other people to help you, obviously Ronnie, myself, Greg Warden, our ECNL director, Dan Sidebottom, our assistant ECNL director. We're all here to help you. Any of our other directors are here to help. We want to help you achieve your goals and dreams and go on and you know, go to the next chapter of your life and your soccer career. So we are here to help. Again, if you look on our college resources, recruiting resources page, You can click onto that, and there's lots of information there. We will also be posting this, the link to this video and putting it in Playmetrics. You know, we're excited to have all of you and help all of you achieve what you want to achieve.
Best of luck, everyone, as you're finishing up high school seasons and as you start to re-enter into the club game. We'll look forward to seeing you guys on the field soon.
Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.